I don't think it ever felt easy by any means.
Right.
Easy running a business, easy managing my time, easy being a dad, easy being a husband, right? It's still not. My wife is just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What's wrong with your brain?
Hi, friend. Welcome to the Big 4L. I'm Stephanie McLaughlin. This is the place where we talk about a midlife turning point no one warned you about. The very normal, often messy, always meaningful experience of transition sometime around age 40. For many of us, it's the first time we realize the life we built in our 20s and 30s doesn't quite fit anymore. The job, the relationships, even the goals we once chased start to feel a little bit off. I know that feeling well. I've fought against it hard, and honestly made the whole thing messier than it had to be. On this show, we talk about what happens next, how people navigate change, redefine success, and build lives that actually feel like their own. I share stories and conversations that help you make sense of what might be shifting in your life and remind you that you're not the only one figuring it out. And when the conversation wraps, I'll take a few minutes to connect what we've just heard to the bigger themes and patterns that show up in this turning 40 transition. So don't rush off when the interview ends. Today, my guest is Nathan Karol, who hit midlife and didn't have a breakdown. Instead, he came to the realization that the way he had been operating no longer worked. A career shift in his early 40s forced him to revisit an ADHD diagnosis he had long forgotten. And then everything from ambition to self-trust started to fall into a new, much clearer place. Hey, Nathan, welcome to the show.
Oh, gosh. Well, thanks for having me, Stephanie.
You almost sounded surprised there. That shouldn't have been a surprise.
Wait a minute.
You do know you're here, right?
I am here.
With
and you know
me.
why I'm here?
Why?
Because I'm not all there. Oh, gosh. So dad jokes. Sorry. I had to.
Very, very bad dad jokes.
I had to. Yeah, terrible. Terrible.
Well-
That's not the entire story of my life, I promise.
Well, I don't know. We'll let the listener make that conclusion at the end of your story because
True.
it may actually be true. I am thrilled to have you here. You're a fellow New Hampshireite, and you and I have met in real life, which is not, I know, which is not true of most of my guests. So thrilled to have a hometown guy here on the show. And I also know some of your story because we've crossed paths in the business community, but I'm really, really interested and intrigued to hear the behind the scenes because you and I have met each other in very polite networking ways. And
I love that.
Yeah.
Very polite networking way.
Yeah.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Which when we first spoke recently, you said something so fabulous to me about networking. You said you had just learned a new phrase or somebody had told you a phrase about networking and sort of the good versus the not so impactful. Do you remember what you told me it was?
Oh, I do. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I know a few things about networking, but yeah. So we talk about not having hairbrushing sessions, right? We talk about making sure that if we're going to meet with someone or if we're going to reconnect with someone, that there's purpose to it, right? The purpose can be simple. The purpose can be to reconnect and understand what's happening in life and personal. When we talk about these hairbrushing sessions, we do this great, this little quaff, right? And then it's like, oh no, you're beautiful. No, you're beautiful. No, like come with purpose.
Yeah.
Come with purpose. Connect with me with purpose. Whatever that purpose is, that's fine, but connect with purpose.
Yeah. What I loved about that was I extrapolated it straight to my podcast immediately because one of the things I love about the podcast is that I get to jump in and have really meaningful, meaty conversations with people about real things in life. And so when I say that you and I met each other in polite networking ways, like we know each other to sort of shake hands and say, hello, how are you? And how have you been? And how is business? But we don't really know each other.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Today we're going to do that.
Ooh, baby.
All right. So let's go back to the beginning. Tell me a little bit about the forces that shaped you as a person. How did you become the person you were when our story begins in your mid-30s? What's your background?
Yeah, so let's see. I grew up in Massachusetts, outside of Boston. My dad was a landscaper. My mom spent some time at home with us, and then worked in development, alumni, and a number of other roles, but I spent a lot of time outside. I think that comes back into my story later on. But my dad tells stories that he had an old engine that he took out of a truck once for his business, and it was still in the yard. And one day I decided that I wanted to go outside and take the whole thing apart. And I stripped the whole thing down, except for the camshaft, which is that big, long thing that goes through the middle. I don't know anything about engines, but I was just like, I want to take this apart.
Mm.
I'm really good at taking things apart. As for putting them back together, maybe not so much. But I would dig holes. My dad had a tractor. He was a landscaper, right? He taught me how to drive the tractor. We had some land, so drive the tractor and then to use the backhoe and pull out stumps and just do all this like fun stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Little boy
Um,
stuff.
oh, total little boy stuff. Yeah, I got my son doing that at some point in his life too, and so I spent a lot of time outside. I probably got into some trouble outside too. I thunk into some mud when I was a kid, got a piece of glass in my foot, all that stuff that kids really should do. Got really dirty a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, had a relatively, I would say, simple childhood. I traveled a lot with my uncle when I was older. My uncle was in politics in Massachusetts for a while, and he doesn't have any children, no other family, and so my sister and I were his family, and we'd go on a summer trip. So it was right around the 4th of July, and we would every year pick a place, right? So my goodness, I've been to San Antonio, I've been to Seattle, I've been to British Columbia, I've been to LA, I've been here, I've been there, because that's what we did. And of course I got the travel bug, I got the aviation bug at some point,
Mm.
which then played into the rest of my life and a number of fun things. I also, when I was about, let's see, 12 years old, was told by my parents that I had ADHD.
Mm.
I was like, okay. 12 years old, I was like, I don't know what that means.
Right.
And they said, oh, you're going to take this medicine. It's going to help you. And it did.
Okay.
But it was, 12 years leading up to that sort of was interesting. And this was, of course, a while ago. I'm 42 now.
Right.
And it's interesting to think how far mental health and all of that has come, because I was like put in the back of the classroom with a study carrel around me and that sort of thing. And if anybody is ADHD and has ever had that experience where they're like, oh, here, go here and be quiet, like on purpose.
Yeah.
What did I do with the cardboard study carrel in the back of the classroom? I wrote on it. I poked holes in it. Oh, it was not helpful. It was an absolute distraction.
Yeah.
So I'm this kid that started out outside. I got the travel bug and the aviation bug. When I went to college, that's when I sort of blossomed. I usually say to people when it comes to, milestones in life and things like that, I said, I don't always show up early, but when I show up, I really show up, right? Which is the exact opposite of who I am as a person who, like, when I have to show up for a job, I'm always early.
Yeah.
But when it comes to life events
Yeah.
and those sorts of things, I'm like, I'm never there early. But when I get it, and I'm there and I'm in. So high school was probably a shit show, if I can say that.
Okay.
And then I got to college, and a little freedom, a little finding my space and my place. I was very comfortable where I went to school because I did these aviation camps when I was in high school. So I knew the staff and I knew the place, right?
Can I
And that,
pause you for a second? You didn't
yes,
happen to go to Daniel Webster, did you?
I most certainly did.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
Is
for
this a
crying
parallel?
out
Are we having a
loud.
parallel moment?
Well, no, we're having a worlds colliding moment. For those of you listening, Daniel Webster College was a small private college here in New Hampshire that was
Yes,
focused on aviation. And
that was founded on that.
my aunt was the president for 25 years.
Cut it out. Who's your aunt?
Hannah McCarthy.
Oh my God. I didn't know that before
How would
right
you have
now.
known that? How would you have known that?
Is so wonderfully insane. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she was there when I was there.
Of course she
Yes,
was.
indeed.
Yeah.
Oh my
What a
goodness.
riot. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
So small world. Up here in New
Yeah,
England, it is a
small
very
world.
small world.
Oh my word. Yeah, so I went to Daniel Webster College. I was going to be a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
After the first year, I said, wait a second. I don't think I want to be a pilot anymore.
Interesting.
So I'd gotten involved. I found a mentor. I was doing a lot of campus activities and all this stuff. And I was finding myself and I was using my hands like I am now to talk and got into theater. I don't know how. I was not on the stage, believe it or not, but I was behind the scenes and all of a sudden it just sort of blossomed. Like I said, like if I don't show up early, but when I show up, I show up. Right. So I got involved. I was getting others involved. I was doing things. And that was a lot. And it
Yeah.
was a lot of great stuff that I had never experienced. And at some point, going to the airport of this thing that I loved, I took flight lessons when I was a kid, but this thing that I loved became this thing that I dreaded. I would want it to be a weather day
Mm.
when I go to the airport because I was like, I don't want to do it. Like it felt like too much pressure, too much stress, too much, all of that.
Yeah.
Remember that little ADHD thing that
Yeah.
happened? Yeah, that's why. I know that now that that's
Oh,
why. Because I
interesting.
was I was off the meds because I couldn't get a medical if I was on those meds, right? To be able to fly. So I was off the meds and I didn't have the structure and I didn't have the coping mechanisms. I didn't have a therapist because that wasn't a thing in early 2000s for young guys,
No.
right?
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a mess. I told this story, a part of the story at a chamber dinner a few years ago. And I said to someone, and I actually got claps from the back. I said to someone, I was on academic probation
Yeah.
in college.
Yeah.
Right. And that actually helped me to connect with others who had the same experience.
Yeah.
And these are successful, wonderful people. It's nothing about our personalities or who we are. It's just that our brains work differently.
Yeah.
That is 100% what it is. Our brains work differently. Our frontal lobe probably looks different than yours.
Well, and I know that to be true because in my family, my dad was an electrical engineer. My younger brother, right behind me, was a guy who not only liked to take things apart, he also put them back together. He became a mechanical engineer. And my youngest brother thought he was going to go to college for industrial design, but ended up transitioning into quality engineering. He is a quality engineer now. And then my mom, when she went back to college, when we were all in school, she studied geology. So my entire family is like science minded and science based. And then there's the pink girl over here who literally sees in my head, I see words. I see how things are spelled. I see
Mm-hmm.
punctuation. I see.
Mm-hmm. This is
So,
my
so you
brain.
don't have to tell me that
Yeah.
brains are different because
Oh, yeah.
I think so differently than most of my family does,
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
for no reason other than I am me and they are them. And then let's not even put on the ADHD or any of the other challenges or quirks our brains might throw at us.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
we'll leave
Absolutely.
that there for now and then we'll come
Yeah.
back to it in a little
Right.
bit. But so
Right.
academic
But
probation, not doing
yeah, but
awesome at college.
that experience shaped me.
Yeah.
It was difficult. I had people that said, "Hey, you have to do this. You have to get through this."
Mhm.
And this is how we're going to do it. I got a lot of chances given to
Yep.
me by amazing human beings,
Yeah.
right? Because they get it, because they got it, because they saw the human and they saw the struggle and we got through it.
Yeah.
So I stayed at Daniel Webster. I pulled away from the aviation major. I majored in business,
Mhm.
which was perfect because there's so many elements of business and so many things that I could then explore, right?
Mhm.
And over time, to kind of fast forward before we use the entire hour on my college career, was different jobs, different positions based on either who I knew, what I knew,
Mhm.
the skills that I had, changing over time. You look at my resume, and what's interesting is that ADHD brain, right? Someone who's that's at a position for a couple of years or at a position for a little while, and then says, "No, I want to do something else. I want to do something different. I want to do something else."
Mm.
And that was a theme, a thread, right? And so I did some wonderful, wonderful work. I worked for a while, with Blue Man Group in Boston, which is now closed,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
That was a story that came out of my college career because I met some people simply booking tickets for students to go, and I called up one day and asked for an internship, and the rest is sort of history. And
Yeah.
and ended up working there full time after college for a while. And there's, yeah, experiences like that whether they were 6 months or whether they were 2.5 years, they shape you in
Mhm.
certain ways. And you take things from them.
Yep.
I took From my very, very first job, I learned how I wanted to be as a manager or not,
Yep.
right? How I wanted people to feel, how I wanted to treat people. My very first job from like 12 to 18. And then subsequently from all of those experiences, it was again how I want to treat people, how I want to be treated, how best to pull in groups of people and,
Hmm.
and create community or create a community within something. And so moved into a variety of roles, was living outside of Boston. One year decided that I was doing a lot of hiking and stuff like that. I wanted to leave my job at a synagogue outside of Boston and I wanted to go work outside again, right? So
Yep.
that comes back
Full
full
circle.
circle. I
Yeah.
wanted to go work outside and experience the outdoors, but do some education because I had been in that world in the synagogue. And I did that for a summer with high school teens in various places, some of the most amazing places, but then found myself doing seasonal work. I found myself one season being a ski instructor because of a connection that I had made, not a hairbrushing session,
Yeah.
mind you, a real connection that I had made in this summer job that I had. And this gal said, "Hey, I live out near Tahoe and I coach this race team at this mountain and you should come out and be a ski instructor." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. Yeah.
I had moved to New Hampshire. I was working with the Appalachian Mountain Club at the time, but on the summer season, and then I went out there in probably November, December, and stayed till April, and then came back. Before I had gone, I met my wife after my first season of trail work and working with AMC and whatnot. My brother-in-law was my boss at the time at AMC. And long story short, he invited me to a party at their new house, not too far from where we are here in New Hampshire. And the party was supposed to be like work people and family. And by the time I got there, it was just family, his family. And I knew none of them and they weren't work people. And I had long hair and a beard. So for anybody watching the video, you see that. For if not, just picture not a great beard, but a lot of it and really long pulled back hair. And I used to wear this buff, which was like this cloth to keep the hair back. And my wife now sees me from across the yard and was like, "Who's that pirate?" This is how
Yeah.
she tells the story. "Who's that pirate?" But thankfully for me, the closer I got, she's like, "Oh, the pirate is not as pirate as I thought he was from back there." So
Yeah.
anyway, we met. We had our first kiddo in, let's see, what year was that? 16,
Okay.
2016. So he's 9. And then we had our daughter in 2019. So she's going to be 6 very soon.
And so that's
And
your early 30s at that point. Early 30s, mid 30s.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the early 30s. Still figuring out
Yeah.
what the hell I want to do with my life when I grow up, right? Because I didn't know. It was also going from that seasonal career to back to sort of sales and marketing. I did some hospitality work for a while, and it was all very interesting. Looking at it now from where I am and where I've come in the last few years, I go, geez, okay. It would have been really great to have the great therapist that I have now, to have like my ducks in a row, because that could have gone a different way,
Yeah.
for example. But it didn't. And that's okay,
Yeah.
right? I think that's something that I don't struggle with, is the fact that what I say to myself, whether it's out loud or in my head every single day, is that everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
Everything. We may not know the reason, we may not ever know the reason, but it just does.
Yeah.
And so I sort of can simplify and kind of sit within that, the fact that everything happens for a reason,
Yeah. So how'd
which
you
I
end
love.
up getting to, I think the first time I became aware of you, you were working for one of the chambers of commerce up in sort of mid
Yes.
New Hampshire, northern New
Yeah,
Hampshire?
well, Northern. I was at the time I was working for the Littleton area
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce. So I was on the board there for a little bit when I was starting to get involved in community, kind of finding my footing there. Then the role of executive director opened up and they board members actually asked me to take that role. I was
Mhm.
interested in it. And I was there for about 2.5 years, having fun, doing some great stuff in community,
Yeah.
love it. And then COVID hit,
Mm.
right? Of course, right?
Yeah.
Doing this thing and then poof, COVID hit.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, come July of 2020, I didn't have a job anymore because those types of organizations, 501c6 organizations, weren't supported by any of the grant funding or any of the relief funding or anything like
Yeah.
that. And so the chamber found itself not being able to pay me and people not paying their dues because they didn't know what was going to happen, all that unexpected stuff,
Yeah.
right? So by no fault of anybody but maybe someone in a lab in China,
Right.
I I was jobless,
Right.
and I started a small business strategy and consulting firm called Cardinal Consulting. The cardinal has a special place in my heart and my world because every time I see a cardinal, I think of somebody who is no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just wonderful. So we called it Cardinal. And I knew that one of the things that I needed to do was promote
Right.
myself. And I love to talk to people and I wanted to continue to connect to people because
Right.
that's what I did a lot with the chamber. And so I said, I'm going to start a podcast. And it was called Bizcast NH. And I teamed up really early on, like teamed up with the folks at Business New Hampshire Magazine
Which we
and
need to
said,
pause here for a
yeah,
moment and
total
say
pause.
that I
Yes.
am an alumni of Business New Hampshire Magazine.
Yes,
When I
exactly.
moved back to New Hampshire in the early 2000s, I spent about 2 years as the editor of the magazine and then the associate publisher of the magazine for a while. So,
Yeah.
so again, it's small world circles
I love
here.
it.
Yeah,
See, everything happens for a
yeah,
reason. There it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
And yeah, and so I said to them, I said, "Hey, I know you have an audience, a larger audience than I do. Let's figure this out."
yeah.
So we started a podcast together. And that podcast is still going. I am not the host of that podcast anymore, but it is having an amazing run. I think it did over 100 episodes of that, and we created it and grew it and met folks like you and
Yeah,
other people from around New Hampshire. That's how we met. We met
yeah,
in a studio in Amherst, New Hampshire,
right.
face to face in person
Yeah,
at a table having an experience,
yeah,
right? Yeah. And let's see here. I'm trying to think of how old I am, was,
yeah,
whatever, and
right.
all of that. And so to go back to the brain, right?
Yeah,
Cardinal for me in the beginning, actually, it was really, I hate to say, but really easy because I had so many connections and there was so much relief money
yeah,
and money towards building communities, resiliency, all of this stuff. I had this client, and they had this money to use and this money to spend here. And how do we
hmm
do that? And so I would help them. They would work with me. I would strategize. We would work together in a number of different ways. I utilized my relationships with chambers of commerce for one of my first clients to build relationships with them. So a lot of partnership development and these other roles came out of it,
mm,
which was amazing. I had, before I just recently sunset Cardinal, I had a client for, I think, all of like 4.5 of the 5 years
yeah,
of Cardinal because they knew me from my prior role. They believed in what I could do, and they had a lot of work that they wanted to do in community. And we continued to just work month after month on building relationships, building partnerships,
yeah,
connecting within community. And it was wonderful.
yeah,
Here's the thing. The brand, the brain power, for lack of a better phrase, was me.
yeah.
And that's great, right? It's who I know, what I know, how I work, how excited I get, things I can get done, all of that. But it is really hard to replicate that.
Oh, I'm aware. I mean,
You are fully aware as someone who is a
yeah,
solopreneur. I mean,
yeah,
it is hard to replicate that. It
yeah,
is also really hard to build and grow something when you are riding the bike, flying the airplane, as it were, all of that, and have this thing between your ears to contend with,
right.
right? And have the stress of family
Yeah.
and just the world and everything.
Well, and
Yeah, that was
especially
always a struggle.
yeah,
Always a
especially
struggle.
the way you were doing business, which is similar to the way I started out doing business. It was
Mm,
it was me, my skills, what I had on board, and the people I knew, and the connections that
yeah,
I could make.
right. Like,
And
here's my basket. Like,
yeah,
this is what I got.
yeah, and that doesn't scale.
No, it doesn't.
So, and to your point of when you start, it's pretty easy. It's like, oh, I'm going to write this, or I'm going to do this press release or this outreach or whatever.
Yeah,
But at some point, you have administrative work that you have to do, or you have business development work that you have to do, or you have networking that you have to do, or you have all these things as a business owner that you have to do that are now taking away from the hours you can actually do your work.
right,
And
right.
so,
We
there
have to work on our business
right.
at some point, not in our
Right.
business.
And so
That's
there
what
are other
the
models that as
yeah,
a solo person might scale better, but
sure.
the way you were doing it and the way I was doing it at the beginning, they're just not that wildly scalable. I ended up
Right.
taking on team members who, let's say, savoir faire will be 19. And I
Hey,
have somebody who's been with
congratulations.
me like, 16 of those 19 years, and another person who's been with me 15 of those 19 years.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
I took that path of like
Mhm.
finding the right teammates to come on and
Yeah.
build community with here in
Right.
my
And I mean,
business.
so I tried that at some point. It
Yeah.
was more of like a contract role. I had a client come on that I said, "Well, I'll pull this person in. They're amazing."
Yeah.
And we like did the work, did the project, right? And then the project is done and you don't necessarily have something else for them to do, or what you're doing is not within their skill set.
Right.
And so it's like, "Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we do
Yeah.
now?"
Yeah. Yeah, I followed my nose on that one, and we were able to
Mm,
find a vein that really worked for us, where I did have recurring and ongoing work for my team. So I was able to retain them over
yeah.
the long term, really. But now
Yeah.
one of the things I want to dig into here is
Mhm.
during all of this, during your 20s and during your 30s, your 20s when you're kind of following your nose and wandering and
Oh, yeah.
trying lots of different things, and your 30s as now you're a married guy and a dad, and you're starting to sort of buckle down a little bit more, and you don't have any thought during this period of your life or any consideration or memory of sort of being ADHD, do you?
No.
Right. This was like, oh, that was a thing I had when I was a kid, and you've like never thought
Yeah,
of it
no,
again.
you are absolutely right.
Right. I just want to
Absolutely
point
right.
that out because it becomes salient in a moment.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm just like I'm doing life, I'm doing, and like some things are a real struggle and some things are amazing,
Yeah.
and it's just I don't think it ever felt easy
Right.
by any means.
Right.
And easy running a business, easy managing my time, easy being a dad, easy being a husband, right? It's still not. My wife is just like, "Wait, what?
Yeah.
What's wrong with your brain? What?"
Right. Right.
So we have those conversations now, but there was a turning point, and of course this when I first met this person, it was probably a little bit of a hairbrushing session,
Mhm.
maybe not. I don't know. I'll have to ask him. But I met someone about a decade or so ago in the financial services industry, and we just got to talking, and I think an associate of his sold me some life insurance or those sorts of relationships and whatnot. All good people.
Yeah.
And for some reason along the way, we just sort of like kept in touch, right? We didn't like, go out for dinner and out for drinks every month or whatever, but it was every once in a while, see a LinkedIn post or you get a phone call or
Yeah.
say, "Hey, what's up? How are you? What's going on?" And over a year ago, we were having a Zoom call. We had set it up. We said, "Oh, we should reconnect." And I think the intent of the conversation on his side was that he would get names from me of people that he could recruit to hire as he had just joined a new firm.
Mhm.
And at some point in this conversation, it turned to a conversation about me
Yeah.
joining him.
What you were doing.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I okay, I think this is what I need.
Mm.
Now, long story short, I told him no at least once or twice. I rated myself a 5 out of 10, but I knew that I needed to go back and sort of figure out if indeed this was the right role, the right path, the right
Yep.
place, right? Did a lot of research on the firm and the industry and all of this and called him back up. And I remember saying to him, "Hey, Sam, remember how I said I was a 5 when we talked last? And that was months ago." He says, "Yeah." I said, "I'm a 10. I'm a solid 10. So what are we going to do?" He said, "Okay. All right. So here's a few steps. Do this, do that, right? We have an interview and tell the firm who you are, etc." That started a path and a journey for me that has continued to change my life. It's
Mm.
been over a year, year and a half, absolutely changing my life
Yeah.
for in so many ways.
Yeah.
And so
And so now
when
we're
you
at about
enter,
40, right? When this is
we're at
happening?
close to
Yeah.
40.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When you enter the financial services industry, there's a variety of licenses depending on what you're doing. And those licenses require you to study
Yeah.
and learn content and a variety of things.
And pretty intense stuff too. I have friends
Oh,
who have done this in the
sure.
past, right? This is not like, yeah, I don't even
This
know
is
what I want to compare
400
it to.
very thin pages of content, right?
Yes.
This is hours and hours of studying. This is 130 50 questions or something like that. I don't even remember now because I try to block most of it out. But first test, relatively easy to concepts to understand, not bad. Great, did great. Second test was a bit of a slog,
Yeah.
did okay. Then come the two big tests.
Well, and let's remind ourselves of your experience in college.
That we are now 42, we
Right.
do not have any different mechanisms of coping than we did then. We may have developed some things and whatever.
Sure.
So here we are. I'm trying to like take tests. I'm trying to study. I'm trying to focus and concentrate for like over the course of hours on this one thing.
And I think the best of us at this point in our adult lives are
Yes,
sort of out of the habit of that level of
sure.
intense
Yes.
study and attention and absorption of material. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, we all have intense periods in our work lives and we all have things that we, focus on, but this level of like study and absorption and having
Of
to
yeah.
regurgitate it back is just
Well, and
it's
you said habit too, right? But
right.
if you don't have the habits,
Correct.
you can't recall the habits because
Right.
they don't exist,
Right.
right?
Hi. We'll get back to the conversation in just a minute. We are about halfway through this examination of midlife transition, and I wanted to let you know that the Big 40 doesn't stop when the episode ends. I've put together an email series that's like a companion guide to this midlife terrain. It's got stories and reflections and prompts that help you make sense of your own transition, wherever you may be in that process. Think of it like a note from a friend who's walked the same path and has some very hard-won insights to share. You can get that companion guide at thebig40.com. Click subscribe right in the main navigation. All right, back to the show.
I never was a great studier. I never could really concentrate. I'd go to the library in college and that wasn't more helpful because I'd see people or a magazine or I'd get up or I'd
Mm-hmm.
hear something and I'd the lights flickering or whatever and then it's all done with. I didn't have anything to sort of fall back on to go, oh, I know how to do this. I
Yeah.
got it. This is my the way that I do this. And it got really interesting.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting because the stress level raised, right? Because they said, hey, here's this window that we want you to be in. Here's a window that we want you to start here, end here. Here's the date, whatever. Well, I start to study. Time comes for this first big test. I go in and I miss it by 2 points.
Hmm.
2 points.
Painful.
When you miss something by 2 points,
Yeah.
it is not for lack of understanding of the subject matter.
Yeah.
It is because there are other factors.
Yeah.
Like my brain, first of all,
Yeah.
the fact that maybe it's the anxiety and the stress that then actually like
Short
physically
circuit.
and chemically
Yeah.
change your brain in these moments and you cannot function,
Yeah.
right? Being in a room, now granted there was like dividers and stuff and white noise machines and all that. And to me, the white noise machines are more distracting anyways, because I start to hear like the little noise within the white noise machine, but that's just my brain. I don't know about yours, but I'm like, oh, this is great. So anyway, first time didn't pass. The crummy part, there's a 30-day lockout
Mm.
until you can take the test again. So now I have the stress of, hey, my time frame just changed. And oh, by the way, let's start to study for that second test as well
Right.
so that we can kind of, make up some of the time here. It was very interesting. So at some point, I don't know exactly when, but at some point, I found a great therapist.
Yeah.
It's a place, and I'll shout their names from the rooftops. Growing Roots in Plymouth, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
God bless these human beings.
Right.
They have a wonderful guy that I work with. He's my therapist, and we are working through my brain, reminding myself of like who I am, what my strengths and weaknesses are, how my brain works,
Yeah.
because there is a way to say, hey, if you have ADHD, this is what happens or cannot happen within your brain. This is the stuff that's hard, right? And he's helping me. And at some point, I realized, hey, I can apply for accommodations.
Well, before we even get to
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
point,
Please.
he reminded you that you had ADHD.
Yeah, he
He
did.
he was the one who said to you, "Hey Nathan, Might it be an issue that when you were 12, somebody diagnosed you with ADHD and you were medicated all
Yeah,
through high school and college? Like, do
yeah,
you think that might still play a part here? And you
yeah.
went,
Well, and he also, because I said to him, I had a therapist a while back, and he said that I might have like bipolar. And he looks at me and he goes, "You don't know how many people come into my office because some other therapist told them they are bipolar, and these people are straight up 110% ADHD."
yeah,
He's like, "You do not have bipolar. You are ADHD. You are
yeah,
a classic case."
yeah,
Quite literally, it was like, in order to get an initial diagnosis, had me do this assessment online on his computer in his office. And of course, I'm like answering the questions and I know, what's coming. And he's like, "Yep,
yeah,
okay, you are." And so now he can write the letter to send to this regulatory organization that will help me
yeah,
to find ways to get through these tests.
right.
I think in the meantime, I took the test another time and I failed it by 2
2 points.
points again. Well, when I went for the third time, now I was able to go to this testing center, rooms full of white noise machines and cubicles and cameras and regulatory things. Anyway, I now get to go with extra time.
Hmm.
That brings the anxiety and the stress down. And I get to go into a private room.
Yeah,
So basically, like, I feel like I have all the time in the world
yep.
because I did it within the confines of the time, and the time wasn't an issue, but in my brain, the time was an issue.
Was a
My
stressor.
brain said
Yeah.
is a stressor, right? It was like, hey, you're not gonna have enough time. You're not gonna have enough time. So you start to rush, and it goes off the rails, right?
Hmm.
So now, third time for this first test, I go in, I do the thing, and I believe I audibly screamed when it came up on the screen that I passed.
Yeah,
And they were happy for me, and I was happy for me, and all that. But I had another test to go. And
right.
I think in the meantime, I had taken the first round of the second test.
Hmm.
Same deal.
Yeah,
I think this was 1 point
yeah. So
that I failed.
painful. Because these are
1 point.
like multi-hour. This is
Yeah,
not
so
like,
the addition of time made it close to like 5 hours of time that I would have.
yeah,
And here's the thing, you can get up, right? You can get up as many times as you want. But I also, because I was stressed, I felt self-conscious. So I don't want to get up. I don't want to run out of time and this and that. That private room, I'd get up every few questions. I'd stand there, I'd stretch, I'd
yeah,
move around, I'd shake my brain out,
yeah,
I'd shake my hands out, the whole thing. And I would start to talk to myself like, hey, you got this.
yeah,
Sit down. If you don't get it, skip it, take a breath, do what
yep,
you need to do, talking to myself. And this is something that I couldn't comfortably do over the years,
yeah,
to talk to myself about myself.
yeah,
I don't know if others can do that or not, but even just saying, you're great, you got this,
yeah,
whatever it is, I couldn't do it for some reason. I was like self-conscious of myself. I don't know what it was. It just it seemed like foreign or to me. But
yeah.
anyway, I think so. Long story short here is that I got through those tests. I was supposed to start at this firm in, I believe it was September or October of last year. I started in April.
Oh,
But remember what I said earlier. I may not show up early, but when
right.
I show up, I show up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I start this new role and I'm like a sponge.
yeah.
It's like, tell me everything that I'm doing well and not doing well.
Mm,
Teach me ways to do things differently because I've been doing things the same way for a while. And
yeah,
I've also been in my own head, in my own business for the
yeah,
last 5 years. So get me out of my own head.
right.
Help me put my network of people together, get me out of my own head, help me to understand better ways to do things, change my mindset. We talk about mindset every single day
Interesting.
because mindset is huge. Mindset is about how productive your day is, how much you believe in yourself and the work that you do, all of that. And so it's always around mindset now.
Yeah, that is
And
true.
it's
But beyond mindset,
mhm,
you could be the most positive person. You could be someone who's manifesting the life of their dreams. You could be
Mhm.
someone who's living in that positive future. Like you could be all of those things and still be struggling with your own brain,
Oh, absolutely,
right?
absolutely, and so I think what I have done, again, with my therapist is quite literally learned what, like, for example, the executive functions are, and
Right.
just understanding what executive functions in the brain are
Yeah.
has allowed me to look at situations at home, like, why do I leave the knives in the sink after I do all the dishes? Or why do I leave that light on? Or why do I do this? Or why can't I remember to, like, go get the laundry out? Or all of these things are based on executive functions or the lack of them working appropriately.
Mm.
But for me, and this is for me in life and work too, is like if I understand one of my inadequacies or something that I don't do well, now I'm like all over it. I'm going to
Mm.
tackle it. I'm
Mm.
going to say, well, you know what? I don't do it well. So how can I do it better?
Mm.
Right. And that's really like what my life is every day now is
Yeah.
going, okay, this is the way they want it done, or they recommend that we do this to be successful. I know that I work this way and that.
Yeah.
How do I need to change the what I need to do to get the same outcome?
Well,
Right.
and it's how do I develop my own way of doing this?
That's true.
Right?
That's
How
true.
do I
Yes.
take the structures that this new firm is trying to teach me, all the good stuff, all these great habits
Mm,
and great processes that they know will make people successful,
right.
but may not work with my brain and how I think and process. So
Mm,
now I have to take column A and column B and make them work for me so that in
yeah.
column C, Nathan has a successful approach to all of the different things he has to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a
Eh,
sales coach many years ago who, was just teaching us his process and he was very adamant about it. And he was frankly a bit of a bully. And I always resisted some of the more aggressive things that he wanted us to do, that he was teaching us to do. And so at one point he sort of tossed off this statement and it was really funny. I would take all the Rickisms and Stephanize them. And I was like, yeah, yeah,
I
I
love
get
it.
your process, but I'm never going to do it like you.
Yeah.
Right? So let me take your process and figure out how I can adapt it and make it work for me. And then I can implement it in a way that will make me successful in my way, not
Right.
necessarily in your way, but in my way.
Right. Right. We're driving to the same outcome,
Right.
but we need to take a different road,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
take a left when someone takes a right, and still end up in the same
Yeah.
place, as it were. Um,
Well, one of the reasons, Nathan, that I wanted to have this conversation with you and wanted to talk to you about this whole transition of really getting to know your brain again and really
mhm.
understanding how it works and trying to optimize how you're using it now is
Yes.
that in the last 12 months I have had a very similar thing happen to me in that I also have a great therapist, and over the course of time, just in the course of conversation and telling her stories and telling her things about me, she would just drop them like little berries in the forest, little seeds. She would say, "Oh, that's an ADHD behavior." And I would go, "I, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, give me a break. I don't know what you're talking about." And then, there'd be another one, and then a month or a couple weeks later, there'd be another one, and I would, like, scoff at her. I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I am, like, have been the most ambitious, independent, go-getter, like, I built my own business, like, t stop talking to me about ADHD." But at the end of, I don't know, a year, I finally made a list of them and there were literally like a dozen of these different things. And what finally got me was she said, "No, they don't look like the typical like for you, right? The classic boy 12-year-old ADHD. I think we all
Mm.
have a picture of exactly what that looks like and
Oh, yeah.
exactly what you were doing behind the cardboard study thing frame, because go tell a 12-year-old boy to sit still and be quiet and you'll get
Right.
exactly the opposite, right?"
You
So
will, yes.
I had that over as a filter of what I was thinking about when I thought about
Mm,
ADHD. And she was saying, Steph, it's so different for not only for women, but for adult women. Like it
Right,
is,
yes.
it comes out
I've
so
heard that.
differently. And
Yes.
so some of these things that I was experiencing, this list of dozen long, and then I started looking back at my history and I was like, oh man, oh, so, I mean, just for example, my professional history is similar to yours in
Mhm,
that I didn't go work somewhere for a decade. My first job out of college, I stayed 5 years, and there are great reasons that I stayed there. But every job after that was like less than 2.5 years
mm,
until I started my own business and started doing things my own way. And like I said, it'll be 19 soon. So I just didn't work in other people's structures. And I didn't realize that that could be as fundamental as my brain can't operate in the structure that you have determined
mhm.
instead of one that I can adapt and make work for me or
Well, and that's the key to, I would say, success for me right now
yeah,
is that there is a framework, but I'm building my own practice,
right.
right? And sure, there is a framework,
Yeah.
but if I need to take a day and go out and network with people and not be at my desk and
Yeah.
do that for a time, or on the other side, if I need to be with my family, if I need to prioritize that I can, if I need to do things slightly differently, and also understand that like there's expectations, I'm going to go to the team and say, hey, this is what I got going
Right.
and this is the help I need, right? Or like this is the guidance and direction that I need. And
Yeah.
there's some amazing people. And what's interesting is that someone at that firm, when I first started, I was talking about my ADHD and I was talking about the accommodations and this and that. And they looked at me and they said, there's a lot of people here who probably have the same diagnosis as you do.
Right.
And those people do really, really well
Yeah.
because they understand their brain, they find their space, they do the way things within the framework, but the way that they need to do it,
Yeah.
and off they go. So the sky's the limit for this, and I made a commitment to my family, to my team, and to the people I work with and for, who are my clients, to do this until I can't do this,
Yeah.
because every day is different. Today was way different than yesterday and the day
Yep.
before that. Sure, same framework, but very, very different, which is great, by the way, for the ADHD brain.
It's one of the things I love about running my own business too, is that
Yeah.
we never doing the same thing. Even though we have long-term clients, we're never doing the exact same thing over and over again. And you
Mhm,
don't know what
mhm,
you're going to do on any given day, which kind of speaks back to my journalism training and my journalism
mhm.
experience of you don't know what story you're covering today or
Yeah.
tomorrow or
Right,
right.
true,
It's and
true.
sure there might be a couple longer, bigger picture things you're working on, longer term projects you're working on, but like on a day-to-day basis, it's like the unknown is so exciting to me and appealing to me, whereas for some
Mhm.
people that unknown would be terrifying and disruptive. And within this kind of organization, I mean, I think we all have friends who are in the financial business. Sure, there's a framework and you have marks you have to hit, but beyond that, it's like it's like going back to, I don't know, algebra class. Like how you get there from A to B is your own thing. As long as you get to the answer, right? As long as you
Yeah,
hit your mark,
right,
how you do your math is for you to build.
right. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And isn't it such a relief? Isn't it such a relief to find something that fits and that feels good and that feels like something you can be a part of for the long term?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the big piece of this is that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
100% every day, everything happens for a reason. I met this guy at a networking event over 10 years ago,
Right.
and his associate sold me some insurance for a reason.
Yep. Yep.
And now you could say, sure, now we know the reason, but maybe there's more reasons. Maybe it's more to it, right?
Right.
We don't have to just say, oh, found the reason.
Yeah.
No,
No, absolutely
this
not.
this is a relationship. It is ongoing.
Oh, that's so great. Nathan, I love this story. It's great because it's relevant to me personally and this late in life news about your own self that
Hmm.
that ends up making things a little
Right.
bit easier. I'm so glad that you reached out to me, that you wanted to come on and share the story. And thank you so much for being so generous with your story.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm always happy to talk about experiences in hopes too that someone else says, "Oh, hey, I have had that experience," or "Oh, hey, I've got self-worth," or "Oh, hey, I should go get a therapist," or whatever.
Right.
If I can give somebody a tiny little nugget that can change their life in some way, great. Awesome.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so
Say
much.
hi to your aunt for me.
I will.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks so much for listening today. It was so nice to get to talk to Nathan, and what a small world story, too, huh? New England is kind of like that. As I was thinking of this conversation in context of the bigger themes that have emerged from all of my guest conversations, I realized something. I was about to start talking about how, for decades, Nathan interpreted friction as something that he had to push through. School was hard, studying was hard, business ownership was hard, time management was hard. And he, like so many people, assumed that the problem was effort or discipline or willpower. And I was going to say that that friction, that misfit feeling was information and not a personal failure. And that's when it struck me that I've said the same thing about burnout several times. And I've said the same thing about exhaustion more than once. So I think it's a little bit bigger than any of these individual topics. As we consider this transition sometime around age 40, I can safely say that things get a little bit easier when you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and reframe the question as, "What is this trying to tell me?" So, whether the messenger is burnout or exhaustion or illness or grief or boredom, or in Nathan's case, cognitive friction, the underlying pattern is the same. And that is that something becomes unbearable, not because you're weak, but because the system you're living within no longer fits either who you are or who you're becoming. And in previous episodes, that signal has often come in through the body. Burnout can show up like fatigue or numbness, even resentment, certainly brain fog. And for a lot of people, slowing down is forced by illness or injury or just sheer depletion. And so the body will say enough or cry uncle long before our conscious brain is willing to actually listen to the message. But in Nathan's story, the signal actually came through his brain, which was interesting. Studying became intolerable, impossible. Time pressure turned into paralysis, and executive function broke down under stakes that were now too high to just force his way through. So, different delivery system, but the very same message. But this is where Nathan's story adds something new, I think. It expands that idea of the body forcing us to listen into something a little bit more nuanced, because sometimes that thing that's forcing us to listen is not pain necessarily, but friction. Nathan wasn't burned out in a classical sense. He was functional, successful, busy, outwardly fine. And I think that that's what makes this conversation so important for anyone who might not feel, I'll use air quotes here, bad enough to justify a change. And ooh, uh, bad enough reminds me of good enough. And that's another one of the big themes that I think we're going to intersect here. I covered 10 big overarching themes of this transition in a recent solo episode about the Midlife Burn book, if you want to check those out and get the bird's eye view. But if we're thinking about things that we can interpret as information, this conversation with Nathan adds a few more facets to that gem. So if everything feels harder, than you think it should, that counts. If you are forever compensating or overcorrecting or white knuckling your life, that counts. And if success requires exhaustion or huge amounts of anxiety or constantly overriding yourself, that also counts. Earlier in our adulthood, most of us interpret these signals as performance problems, things we're not doing well enough. We bully ourselves through because we're not meeting some external marker. It's probably arbitrary, by the way. We tell ourselves to try harder or be more disciplined or push through or fix yourself. But sometime in our 30s or 40s, we get sick of doing that. And when we start to get sick of it, that's when we can make a shift in how we process these experiences. And I have a very silly and kind of ironic analogy here. Think of this like how you learn math through school. And that's the ironic part because I can't do math. But how you learn math starting in grammar school. First, it's the building blocks, then simple operations, then calculations, then advanced math, the kinds that I can literally only spell. But right, first it's arithmetic, then it's algebra, then trigonometry, then calculus. And each one builds on what was learned in the previous section. And this shift in interpretation of information is a lot like that, because this transitionary period that we go through sometime in our 30s or 40s is where we move from, to continue the analogy, simple memorization math to actually understanding the equation. So instead of blaming ourselves for what we're experiencing, we start to think about what it means instead. So, why can't I handle this? Then becomes, why does this feel wrong? And something like, what's wrong with me can become, what is no longer aligned? What's no longer fitting here? Why aren't things lining up? And I should be able to do this can become, yeah, but what's the cost? And Nathan's story, although the contours of the story are totally unique to him, it fits in so nicely with other conversations I've had about burnout and people who were forced to slow down, because it illustrates that same lesson arriving through a different door. When you stop treating discomfort as a verdict or as a judgment and start treating it as data, everything starts to shift. So remember that good enough idea or bad enough idea I mentioned a minute ago? Now let's talk about how good enough intersects with this theme, because this has come up several times recently, specifically in conversations with Michael Ann Valterra and Andrea McGinty, if you want to go and look at those. So many people wait for some dramatic collapse to arrive in their lives before they actually listen. And there's an interesting cultural twist in here too, because we, the royal we's, the societal we, do not give people permission to leave things that are good enough or pretty good. Society tends to only validate change when something is clearly broken. And the external authorities get to tell us what clearly broken means too. And that can become a huge roadblock for some people. Because when nothing is obviously wrong or broken and it's just good enough, we can tell ourselves that we don't have a right to want anything different or to make a change. And that's dangerous, because good enough is probably comfortable enough to tolerate and safe enough to justify staying or not making a change. and functional enough to make you question that inner voice that is questioning you, but it can also eat at you from the inside. So, good enough doesn't create the kind of pain that demands an obvious change. Nathan said he experienced it as friction or as things being not easy. And many of the conversations I have include transitions that involve good enough marriages, decent jobs, perfectly fine circumstances that people have stayed in for too long for any of a million reasons. But this transitional period in midlife is when we learn that you don't need betrayal or disaster to justify making a change in your life. This is when we realize that we've been calling something fine when we've all heard this. Fine is a four-letter word, and it's actually been draining the life out of you. So, one of the things you can learn from Nathan's story is that you do not have to hit rock bottom to justify reconfiguring your life. And you don't have to meet someone else's definition of broken to deserve your life fitting you. And another facet of this conversation that I want to explore for a minute is that midlife is often when old coping strategies stop working. And this is one I've been rolling around with for a little while too. So for Nathan, his ADHD didn't suddenly appear in his 40s, but as responsibilities stacked up and he's got kids and he owned a business and he had financial pressure and some high stakes testing at this new job, all of the strategies that had carried him through his 20s and 30s were no longer enough to compensate for the sheer volume of everything he was dealing with. And this is a pattern that comes up over and over again when the scaffolding that we have built to build our lives suddenly collapses. And I'm actually going through some of this as well with my diagnosis last year of ADHD. Once I finally started accepting that this might be true for me, of course, then you start seeing it everywhere, right? So there's a lot of stuff out there on Instagram about how this is actually pretty common for overachieving perfectionist women during their menopause years. And I don't even have my head quite wrapped around it yet, but it goes something like this. When you build a life on strengths that are actually compensation, those can look like high intelligence or verbal ability or pattern recognition or perfectionism, hyper responsibility, over preparation, anxiety powered motivation, and any external structures that you created for yourself. Those strategies apparently work very well in our 20s and 30s. They earn us degrees and careers and success in business and families for those of you who built those, and probably reputations for competence as well. And from the outside, we look fine or even sometimes exceptional. But inside, we are expending enormous invisible effort. Kind of like a duck, right? The on top be so placid, but under the water, those fins are going like crazy. And that's sort of the intersect again, this enormous invisible effort, kind of like Nathan was experiencing in his life. And so for those of us women in the menopausal years, three things change all around the same time that will kind of break us down or break down these structures. So, number one, as we know, estrogen drops. And apparently, and this is part of what I don't quite have my head wrapped around, estrogen props up executive function or it supports it or ew. In simplistic terms, ADHD is fundamentally a dopamine regulation issue. And so when estrogen declines during perimenopause and menopause, that scaffolding that helped your brain compensate apparently weakens. and all of our old tricks stop working. Then, at the same time that our estrogen is declining, we're often carrying, the peak of our career responsibility, leadership and decision fatigue, parenting or even launching children, as well as aging parents, identity reevaluation, potentially even renegotiating relationships, and a whole lot more maintenance than novelty in our lives. So we apparently have to do more executive function work with less neurochemical support. And then finally, the third thing that kind of breaks down at this period of time is that perfectionism stops being a sustainable fuel source. Or maybe perfectionism as a fuel source finally runs out of gas. For high achieving women with ADHD, perfectionism is often the thing that keeps everything moving forward, but it's fear, pressure, and over responsibility that are doing that job that a support structure should have been doing all along. And this is kind of what Nathan describes, and certainly mirrors what I've explored in a handful of episodes on burnout as well. The system doesn't fail, it expires. It runs out of gas. So midlife, sometime around 40, is when compensation stops compensating, because those strategies were always costly. But when we were younger, we were just more willing to pay the price. And that's where the benefit of using these experiences as information comes in. Because when you start to play detective in your own life, you can remove moral judgment and see that difficulty can be contextual, not personal. Struggle can have an explanation and not be a judgment of your character. And building the support you need becomes appropriate and necessary and not even a single bit indulgent. And that's kind of what this transition is offering you when you start to listen. And imagine what you could do if you were less busy compensating. Woo boy, the sky's the limit, isn't it? All right, next time you are going to meet someone I have been dying to share with you, Cora Runny, whose people-pleasing summit I participated in last summer. We're going to talk about people-pleasing and identity and all sorts of fun stuff. So I'll see you next time. The Big 4 podcast is produced and presented by Savoir Faire Marketing Communications.